Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Thierry, because it's only thanks to your presentation that went through almost all the steps in the process that I, as a representative of the European Commission staff, can now provide a briefer and shorter presentation of the stage where the Commission has the role to play, and that is the end of the very end of the application for authorization procedure, where we are receiving the full package with the applications, RAC and SEAG opinions, and we are to, based on what we see, prepare decisions and then run the whole decision-making process until the adoption of these decisions. So I just would straight go to this stage of the process to maybe complement what Thierry was saying and give you a bit of the Commission perspective to this. As we are at the very end of the procedure for application for authorization, of course, that all these issues that we have been listening to since this afternoon, since the beginning, plus the issues that are then raised potentially within the RAC and SEA committees, are coming to the Commission, and we are there to address potentially those that still remain. And that's why, although we have the formal role in the very end of the process, we as the Commission try to follow all these cases since the very beginning as they develop already in the opinion making. As Thierry has said and provided you a nice overview table, so far the Commission has reached to the final decisions adopted only in 2 cases. And that was one case of DHP and one case of DBP use. But many more are coming, as you have seen in the table. So from all the actors involved, maybe we are the least, we have so far accumulated the least of the practical experience in decision making, not saying that we have not been involved in the other experience building. Out of these 2 decisions that we have adopted so far, these were authorizations granted, and granted based on the proof that there was adequate control of risks during these uses. And we have heard already from one of the applicants concretely this afternoon. But the other application, the very first one, was very similar in the one that these 2 were very first and testing everyone in the system, paying attention to a lot of details. So from our perspective, when we got them to the decision making, they were quite straightforward to process them. As we have seen also in the opinion-making stage, and prepare decisions. The basic points that led us to concluding this were that in these applications the adequate control of risk has been effectively demonstrated. Both cases were well documented and documented that at present there were no alternatives. These 2 were cases where applicants were applying for their own uses, and maybe that's why they have been so specific and uses have been specifically defined. Nonetheless, because these were 2 very first decisions, so along the way and decision making, there came also other issues that we had to settle or pass through or envisage how it would work more general in future also for other cases when we go there. Thierry already mentioned that in particular this was the case, for example, in these cases where the authorizations were granted via the adequate control route. when drafting the decisions, the issue was how to do it to be able to embrace the exact conditions under which this adequate control of risk has been demonstrated. We know that this is the case of a sort of full documentation package that is submitted as an application for authorization. There is a full chemical safety report and all the risk management measures and operational conditions that go with it. And from the legal perspective, these are the conditions under which the adequate control is demonstrated. And this is where the conditions of authorization should go for. However, from the practicalities point of view, this may not always be so easy, especially in cases where, for example, the whole application and decision has been done in one of the official languages, while the actual use may take place in another member state or place where they are using another official language, and the whole documentation is then in the application, language of application and decision. That's why we have had discussions including in in the REACH committee with member states, and including concerns raised by the enforcement authorities to find a way how this could be operationalized in practice. And the outcome of these discussions were that we have agreed to insert or include appropriate monitoring conditions in the authorization decision for such case where the use is actually taking place in another member states using another language than the one of the decision and application. This was the case also mentioned by one of the applicants, Sol Hansman, and the outcome of this discussion is that practically from now on this would be a standard part of the authorization decision, just envisaging this possibility. We know that this can be sometimes quite challenging to operationalize, so to help both sides out, future applicants, be it enforcement authorities, but also ECHA committees, we decided to work further on these operational conditions and risk management measures for the purpose of applications for authorizations. And there is an ad hoc working group has been created that will start working further on this, hopefully with outcome that could be used by all these actors. Then another issue, maybe minor, but still linked to legal requirements, also linked to granted authorizations, was how the authorization numbers that go with the authorized use should be assigned. Again, basically the underlining consideration there in the discussion was that we should create such a numbering system that would enable the authorization be backtracking the holder of authorization together with the authorization conditions, and that is for the enforcers' use as well as for potential downstream users who may want to accede to the conditions of this authorization in future. So this is something on this particular first two decisions. Of course, there is much more to come, and we are currently facing numerous issues with other applications that are in the process currently. And I can give you just some examples already partially either mentioned by Thierry, or partially we may hear more about it from the RAC and SEAC chairman, who will speak after me. So we are, for example, now facing situations where we have certain cases where in the application, adequate control of risks has been claimed, but in the end, according to RAC and SEAC, in this case RAC, has not been demonstrated, and the question is whether then the SEA route, that socioeconomic analysis that was also part of this application, the SEA route arguments would be in these cases solid enough that would provide legal basis to grant the authorizations. Of course, we are aware that this is all case-by-case decision and this shouldn't be generalized, but just to give you a flavor, why is this problem? Probably because the applicants have envisaged to claim their authorizations based on demonstration of adequate control, so they didn't build their socioeconomic case so strongly, and the RAC and SEAC then had difficult task to judge these aspects, and their opinions then, as a consequence, are not always explicit enough to reach from the drafting, decision drafter perspective, a straightforward conclusion and express it in the decision as such. Because it is simply not possible directly to compare whether benefits outweigh the risk and all other aspects. So maybe short recommendation for future applicants in case for whatever reason you decide not to follow a DNL derived by RAC that is recommended for that substance, and you try to claim the adequate control route and demonstration of adequate control with a different value, then just as a safeguard, you should pay attention how you are describing the risk, residual risk or remaining risk linked to the use for the purposes of claiming the socioeconomic route sentence. Because this would then facilitate the committee's work as well as the decision maker work to look at your case from that perspective. Another example, and this is what we have also heard already this afternoon, are applications submitted from an actor on the top of the supply chain and covering not just his supply but further downstream uses. And description of these uses can be quite broad or general. And we have seen several examples that the description and scope of use was done in a positive way, but also giving sort of negative examples which the application is not to cover. So a so-called negative list, which is also a technique, but not necessarily the best one when one then tries to get, for example, input from the public consultation on the alternatives, and it is not quite clear what exactly is covered. On the risk part as well, sometimes in these very broad and general uses applied for, it may be difficult to really get the conditions, risk management measures, and in general control of risk done solidly and well, simply because if you have not enough on-ground information from the actual sites of users, then you may be in trouble. So on this, those applying from the top of the supply chain, we would strongly encourage them talk throughout the supply chain, try to talk to the actual users, collaborate and cooperate with them when preparing the application, because the perspective of the actual user is very important that is captured in the application. We are, of course, aware that this is a business decision. And we are aware of, maybe tomorrow we will hear more about how the consortia are being organized and how they are trying to tackle this issue. And it is always a decision to be made by these members as a business decision, who applies and for what use, and what are fallbacks of certain scope of use applied for. From our perspective, it should be a sort of balance between how large or general the use applied for is, and how well, by keeping this scope of the use, how well the case can be argued to prove, be it adequate control or the SEA route. We have heard that ECHA is already working on this with the applicants, but we are happy to hear whether and they or us as a Commission could do more in this. And then it's almost the end of my examples and list. We have also heard that there are other cases coming, like substances with no threshold for hazards, or PBTs that are purely the socio-economic route way of getting authorization and claiming authorization. We have also heard an example of how authorization is interplaying with other legal frameworks, and this is, be it at the EU-wide level or international level, even for POPs, Basel and Stockholm Convention, or at the EU level for the Waste Framework Directive and linked issues. So this each in itself is probably a complex issue, but imagine that these cases that are currently on our plate have more than one, if not all of these combined in one decision. So we are really busy and trying to get things resolved. And we can only say from our perspective that we are still on a learning curve. We need still build more our experience, but in parallel, we continue thinking ahead and reflecting on a way forward. Yes, we have signals that authorization is working, but tomorrow from my colleagues you will see how we also see the way forward to improve what we can. Thank you.